All right. Hi, I'm Melinda, and a man that I was engaged to's mother committed suicide.
Okay.
I mean, there's never really an acceptable reason because you just can't ever imagine a reasonable, answer to why a life should end prematurely. But I think what came to me to help me sort of have some peace with it was to understand that she was shrouded by this cloud of depression. I mean, it absolutely was overwhelming to her rational thought, as it is to anybody who's in a deep, dark place. And so I think in her mind, the only reasonable solution was to not be part of life anymore. And
What did that first year look like for you?
oh my gosh, it was awful, actually. It was like this explosion, sort of, where I think I'd lived a pretty naive life, where that kind of scenario, just as I said before, it just seemed impossible. Like I couldn't imagine. I never knew anyone who had contemplated it, or certainly not verbalized any contemplation. So I guess I don't know that for sure. But that was just not part of my reality at all. And so it really stirred up anxiety in me. It made me start to think like anything terrible was possible if that could happen. So it absolutely just sort of took this bedrock that I was walking around on pretty comfortably and just like shattered it. And so, yeah, it was tough. Definitely. I mean, like, sort of like this combination of like a hazy denial through escaping different ways and also pretty scared. Just like, oh my gosh, like this isn't like the world's not as nice as I once thought it was. In my fiance's family. I mean, it was like the talk of the town. It was a story. It was sensational. What in the world happened? It was on their property. It was something that people wanted to talk about, and it got to be shameful for them. It was like this was their mom. Like this isn't the news. Like enough. And I think I felt a bit of that too, because people were sort of like marginalizing her life. Like, oh, she's that person who killed herself. It's like, no, she had this whole life. She was this amazingly gifted artist. She was, off the charts, ridiculous, intelligent, so much more than this person who killed herself. That was like the very tiny last page of her whole life story. So yeah, it's like, gosh, no, that's not all of it. I think the belief, and absolutely the belief that was spoken by her, was that everyone would be better off if she wasn't around. And I think that's a pretty common theme for someone who's getting ready to take their life. I mean, that sort of is part of the thinking process. Like, well, my life doesn't matter. It would actually be better for others if I wasn't here too. And it's such a lie. It's understandable once again when you look at like a shroud of just a clouded, dark, depressed mind. That makes sense, but it's absolutely so untrue. Because of course, not only are you taking your life from that person and the people that really do love you, but you're taking a sense of stability. You're taking, like I talked about, that bedrock of like safety, even for families that have their own stuff, which everybody does. They still need you in their life. And so when you remove yourself, like nothing's ever the same. But I think that's really hard to grasp when you're in the middle of that hopeless feeling. But that to me is one of the greatest tragedies, is that they leave with this belief like everything will be better for everybody else. It's like, oh my gosh, no. It's terrible for everybody else, because like you said, there's something that's like this extra pierce, that they had this choice and they chose to leave us. Like, weren't we lovable? Then you start, people start to have these issues that maybe weren't present before. Like, I wasn't worth living for, you could leave me. I mean, she had a grandchild on the way. And so her son's like, you don't want to meet the grandkid. I mean, there's just, it's just such a ripple effect. And that to me that's the saddest part of it. It's all based on a lie. Well, our relationship was never the same. I mean, we had our own issues before. We were young and thought we knew what we were doing, but we didn't. But certainly after that, there was just no, it was like beyond repair. But early days, it was too much for a 20-year-old kid, so that was just, um, we couldn't just be happy-go-lucky anymore. So that was the end of that. So that's just one little part of it, because he had other siblings, and like I mentioned, this child that his brother and his wife had, and it just there just was sadness after sadness, and it was sort of like it's dominoes, really sad, a lot of heartache in their family, and his mom was more glue in the family than she probably ever realized.
Hmm.
Because indeed, when she was gone, things sort of imploded, and there was a lot of fallout. Yeah, it did. I would say be so gracious with yourself. Like, just take good care of yourself, and don't expect things to make sense. Don't expect forgiveness to come easily. Don't expect to have it all figured out. It doesn't make sense. It may take a really long time, but to be kind to yourself. And I know that sounds sort of cliche, but it's really important, because I think in any type of grieving, I think we sort of have these expectations that you sort of didn't know that you even had. But I know I did. You sort of think, well, you just move on. And I mean, you got to pick up the pieces, and we all have life and adults and whatever. It doesn't work like that. So I guess I would just really encourage people to just be gracious with themselves and seek support, seek people like yourself who have the experience and the expertise, just to, kind of put their arm around them and let them know they're not alone, and to give themselves time